Justin and Salone, welcome to the gaming podcast by Underdog, which, by the way, is the first gaming specific podcast. Here we only talk about games, game development, and the industry. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So, can you quickly tell me what is Lumikai and probably, how was this baby born?
Sure. I mean, so I'm very happy. I think I'll provide a little context on just my background because that kind of leads into, how we started the fund, and Saloni can do the same from her side. I mean, very briefly. So I grew up in Delhi, very much a nerd from the earliest ages. My family used to travel for business, and they used to bring back gaming consoles from Japan and the US. So I got hooked on gaming super early. Not a story I tell very often, but I got then shipped off, by the way, to boarding school, smuggled all my gaming consoles into the school where it was banned. And I operated a small mini arcade out of one of the dorm rooms where we would basically charge people like 10p to come and play games. So that was kind of my first gaming venture.
Yeah, so the entrepreneurship started way
From
back.
the age of about 11. So I mean, I went on to spend 18 years in gaming and global digital media. About half of that was in the US with Comcast, and then back in London with News Corporation. And then second half of my career came back to India, worked with UTV on the gaming side, running corp dev for them. Built a couple of my own startups, both in India, in Bangalore and New Delhi. And around that time, started to see, I guess, some really aspirational and smart founders who were looking to get into gaming. These were founders who, maybe were working at other gaming companies that wanted to break out and build their own business, or they were founders that had built businesses abroad that were looking to come back to India, much like myself. But at the time, the venture community wasn't super focused on games. There had been some early bets within the gaming ecosystem, and some of those bets did pretty well. But given the quality of the founders and the potential, there was a kind of disconnect between what we were seeing on the ground and I guess kind of the opportunity to catalyze those companies.
True.
So about 18 months ago, a lot of the global gaming companies that I had worked with, and also Saloni on her side had been working with, started approaching us with an interest to invest into the India gaming market, not just for financial return, but to really understand the market. And a lot of these guys had kind of missed out on the early China wave, so they wanted to get in early and really support the ecosystem long term. So over the course of last summer, we bought a lot of these gaming companies together. And these are some of we haven't announced them publicly, but they're some of the biggest gaming companies in the world. They're likely companies whose games you grew up playing or that you're playing now. And we brought together this great group of LPs, which are investors in the fund, and launched last August. So we've been going for about 8 months now. Lumikai is India's first dedicated gaming and interactive fund. So we invest, I would say, primarily in 3 buckets. One is gaming studios. So these are studios in India that are building for the domestic market, but also for the global market. We also invest in the ecosystem around gaming. So that could be platforms, it could be tools, tech, streaming plays, etc. And then we also look at what we call interactive media, which is, I guess, traditional digital social media that is starting to get gamified or starting to become more interactive. So those are kind of the 3 main buckets that we focus on.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, we're lucky to be backed by some of the world's top gaming companies. We're very patient in our approach. And I think we're not a typical VC, right? Because we invest very much at the early stage. So pre-Series A, could be seed, could be pre-revenue even. And both Saloni and I have built our own games companies for years. So our approach is a little bit different in that we're very hands-on. We like to help founders with everything from product market fit, hiring, strategic feedback, partners on the publishing side, and also future fundraising strategy.
Great. So it's not specific to one particular category within games, but you're also targeting multiple things. Great. Saloni, can you give some of your background?
Sure. So I grew up in Delhi. I did my undergrad here as well. And growing up, I was quite an anomaly because I used to play games and I used to probably be the only cool. I was the cool person and the cool girl in the group because I used to be playing Civilization and Mortal Kombat, spending days playing games. And I remember being addicted to pinball as well when you had those tiny, big, gigantic PCs, and I used to spend so many hours just spending time in front of my computer that my parents thought I was nuts. Never thought that I would be building gaming companies or being investing in gaming companies because after undergrad, which was in economics, I went into investment banking and private equity. So I spent the first 7 years of my career both in the global markets and in the India market doing investment banking. So I was with Morgan Stanley, Barclays, did over $10 billion in M&A deals, and I got thoroughly burnt out until a colleague of mine from business school said, well, do you want to build a gaming company together? And I said, well, what are you talking about? I'm going to help you out and consult you. And there's no way, of course, I'm going to pursue a career in gaming. And fast forward, 4 years, spent time building the business, scaling it, took it to, did multiple rounds of funding. And through that, met a fund called London Venture Partners. And LVP is the fund which pioneered investing in games. So, the partners had tremendous experience from the industry, and they were some of the early backers in companies like Supercell and Unity and Playfish and Natural Motion. And, they were on in my company. Also some early team members from Supercell. And, I was building this immersive social world game for female audiences. So it was a gigantically ambitious project. And that time I had an India SKU, so did a lot of work with Nazara Games and did a lot of work with the larger influencer celebrity ecosystem in India. So got to know the games ecosystem in India very well. But, building a games company in 2013 and gaming in 2013 was very different from what gaming in 2021 is.
Yeah.
And, after my entrepreneurship stint, I joined LVP. I was an investor, I was a principal in the fund. And that was an incredible experience because got to work with companies like Singularity 6. And, these guys have just come out with their MMORPG, Palia.
Yeah.
Worked with Bunch Games, worked with Polystream, App on Board, which is the world's largest no-code platform, with Sensible Object, a company which eventually sold to Niantic. So it was an incredible experience. And I think what happened was that I started seeing a lot of deal flow come from India, but because the fund was Europe and North America focused, there wasn't that mandate to invest in Indian companies. And it almost felt that the time is right for an India-focused fund. And that's when in mid-2019, I came back to India. And that's when I met Justin, and there was just a complete meeting of minds and philosophies on what we wanted to do for the India ecosystem. We've been pleasantly surprised because the ecosystem's given us a massively warm welcome. We've spoken to over 500 game developers in the country in the last 10 months. And it's just we've been blown away by the ambition and just how incredibly passionate founders are in this space, and what an opportunity lies ahead of us for the next 5, 10, 20 years.
100%. So forget about the professional work, but it looks like both of you are gamers by heart. You're playing games since the childhood.
Yeah.
To be very honest, I'm super glad that in the world of IBM-ish VCs, we have someone like you who wants to be supportive towards creators and be approachable with the process that you guys follow, right? And I guess you are easily approachable as well, right? Like a bunch of us, I remember, like a bunch of us, the founders of small independent studios, we all are very much connected. Because it's close-knit community, and we've been talking since 2013-14 that some VC should really focus on the gaming space, because it's pretty obvious that it's growing, right? And people have seen the growth. How do you guys feel about being the first in focusing gaming space, at least in India? Because a lot of VCs feel gaming is a hit or miss, and it's a lot of risk. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I can give my perspective on it. Everybody says that gaming is a hit-driven business, and I keep telling people, well, so is venture capital. So you need to have
Yeah.
a portfolio approach in the sector, and I guess that's what we do. Look, I mean, gaming is an incredibly complex business. This is why there are specialist global funds across the world, because there's depth, there's breadth, there's timing issues, there is you invest too early in this space and you've got a graveyard of VR startups. You invest too late and you've probably missed the hype cycle. So there are just great many nuances of games investing that is very unlike any other kind of investing. There is no problem solution framework that VCs like for gaming. So it requires a very specialist experience, and this is what we were hoping to bring. I think broadly, look, my perspective is that the term gamer is in itself a misnomer, right? Like everybody plays games.
Yeah.
When I was building my company, I speak to these women who were level 55 on Candy Crush, and I would just be like, "Are you a gamer?" And they'd be like, "No, I'm not a gamer." But if you look at their phones, it's full of games. And I just feel that the term in itself is redundant. It's like saying, "Are you a movier?" No, everybody watches movies. There's no word as movier, right? So
Right.
hence, and I think that's a joint thesis, is that there is no such word as gamer. Everybody is a gamer.
Right.
And the world in itself, and some of the most successful apps that we have seen in this world are actually game mechanics in disguise. So, for us, there's a much more broader, I guess, philosophy driving us about the potential for this industry and what we as specialists can bring to this industry.
True. Very true. Justin, any of your thoughts on this?
I think that's a great answer, and I'm so happy to hear Salone mention this distinction between what is a gamer and what is a non-gamer. Back in the dark ages when I was running IGN, I created a new editorial policy where we'd actually ban the word gamer because it's not inclusive, right? I mean, play is directly linked to the right side of our brain. Like it's a system for transferring information in an interactive way. And the current avatar of that may be blockbuster AAA games, it may be mobile games, it may be interactivity, but I think we've just really scratched the surface of it. I think the only thing I'd add from an India perspective is that, look, I mean, we, much like yourself, VAIBHAV, and the community of gamers, and, I've been interacting with a lot of India founders before we started the fund. We felt that there was a need for someone to focus on this space, and there was massive potential and massive talent that, and I've been through the VC journey when I was setting up my game studios in India. And, one of those two companies ended up getting sold and was a really good exit. But we had to go through, we were knocking on maybe 20 or 30 VC doors and no one really got it. And I think that focus has changed now. There's obviously a lot of interest in heat on gaming, which is terrific for the whole ecosystem. But, I mean, I've been through now, I've seen the inflection points in multiple mature multi-billion-dollar markets, Japan, US, and Europe, over the last 15, 20 years. And there's never been a better time to be investing in India. This kind of opportunity comes along once in a lifetime. And, I think that has been validated. And, I think for Fund One, we had several kind of goals and benchmarks, in the back of our head. And we were hoping that, by the end of the first 2 years, we would have built out some kind of brand. Founders would start to get to know us. We'd be maybe meeting with some new studios that we had high conviction on, but all of that kind of got accelerated. I think partly due to COVID and just there's been tailwinds in the market. But broadly, I think what's been interesting is that just within the first 6-7 months, not just the founder community, but also the broader venture community has really welcomed us. They like the idea of having a sector-focused fund that they can bounce ideas off, that can take those bold bets and also be patient, and that they can co-invest with.
Yeah, and to be honest, it was very much needed, at least in the Indian gaming space. It was very much needed. Also, Salone, the point that you mentioned about that this is a hit or miss business, like there's a big argument on this one, if gaming is a hit or miss business. I remember an incident that happened with me as well. When you compared it with the VC pattern, right? So there was I don't want to name the VC, but I went to a VC and it was like a second or third round that I was talking to these people, pretty big VCs in India. So I'm sitting over there and these people tell me that what is the recipe for a successful game? Because it's a hit or miss business, right? it's their perspective. It's a hit or miss business. And what is the recipe? Instantly it just came out that it's as similar as the VC pattern. Like, you guys get around 500 applications every day, but you figure out 10 of them, the better ones, and then you go ahead and then go on in the different rounds and then figure out. Here your skill is to identify those 10 superstars out of those 500 applicants, right? For us being in the industry and having that experience, we also get 500 ideas a day. But we need to figure out, basis the analysis and the experience that we have, we need to figure out what are the 10 ideas that can work. It's as simple as that. 7 of them will fail. 2 of them might do, decent, and one could just boom out. So I totally relate to that point of yours.
Absolutely. And there is, it's incredibly difficult in gaming to say, oh, this game, this product will be an incredible success.
Yeah.
Because gaming is, it's an art as well as it is a science. So, especially investing at the early stages, you need to invest in teams which have the mindset and the temperament to be able to build and identify those successful games and then take it to, fruition, especially as this games as a service model came out, freemium games came out,
Yeah.
it's no longer a ship and pray approach. It is it's an iterative process, and you can keep building blocks to your game, especially if the initial metrics are right. And it's incredibly difficult to really predict whether any game can be a success or not until you've just gone through that process. Some of the best studios in the world have had multiple failures preceding them before they really hit it out of the park. So
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. In fact, I think pretty much all of the best studios have had that issue, right? I mean, whether you go back to premium games, premium mobile, Rovio had, I think, 40 or 50 games that didn't really break out before they got Angry Birds.
Yeah.
Even Supercell went through this process. Even at the, I guess, more premium end of the scale, companies like Epic Games with Fortnite, they didn't really know what that game was when they launched it. I know that because I was with the guys when they actually launched that. Like, that night, they were all terrified. These guys have been building everything from Unreal back in the day to Gears of War. I mean, they have, they're veteran studios who've got the technology to back it. But they iterated on it. They got it right. And that game is nothing close to what they originally envisioned. So, and there's a million examples of this, right? I don't know if you've played No Man's Sky, which launched for, PlayStation.
Yeah.
This is a game that was absolutely panned when it came out. And they have supported it again and again and again. And now it's a community darling. So you need to be focused. You need to iterate. You need to learn from your failures, and you need to move forward.
Yeah. And it's also incredible how passionate, how small communities of game, these gamer communities can build and lead to massive outcomes. EVE Online, it's an Icelandic studio called CCP Games, and these guys have run this for 10 years. I think peak MAUs are about 300,000 users, right? But eventually the company sold to Pearl Abyss for like $300-400 million because they just built this passionate set of users around their game, and they cultivated that community, and they delighted that community. And I always tell people that game development is about delighting your game, your fans. It's all about customer delight, and very few people get that actually.
True, very true. So tell me, how does this work? Like, what is the process that you guys follow to identify the superstar studios?
Yeah, so I'll give my answer, and Salone, feel free to add from your perspective as well. Look, I think one of the things that we really look for is teams that have done their research and have a very clear thesis on what they're building. So that helps with conviction. It shows that they've identified some kind of white space that has scale potential, and it also helps them with their long-term commitment. Building game companies is you have to be in it for the long haul. So I think that combination of having done your research, knowing your market, just doing the groundwork really helps with some of the other things we look for, which is long-term focus, conviction. And, if you're building, broadly, when we see opportunities that are building for the domestic market, there's a lot of opportunity, but you have to think about it, right? So where's the market going? I think there are opportunities around mid-core, social gaming, vernacular content. And this is largely driven by the kind of increasing sophistication of Indian gamers that we've seen, which I think people still underestimate. So I think, you know, within all of that, really understanding what your core thesis is, having conviction around that is super important. We look for that in our founders. If they're building for global, that's a slightly different dynamic, right? So you got to understand that the global market is, you know, it's super well capitalized. It's very competitive, especially now. Again, need to think about your market very carefully. How can you carve out a niche, revitalize an existing niche, or bring something that's already popular, you know, as a genre or a format from a global market that maybe hasn't been popularized in India yet. So I think, you know, whether you're building for domestic or global, we look for founders that really understand and have really thought deeply about what it is they're going to be focused on for the long haul. We see, and, you know, focus is a key thing here. We see a lot of studios that, you know, super talented people, but I think maybe just by the reality of the business and they haven't been able to get dedicated funding, they're focused on a lot of things at once. They have a service component, they're building an RMG platform, they've got an esports thing in the corner, then they're kind of pivoting to hyper casual. And that's great. It's great to experiment, but at some point you need to figure out and align your resources and your talent behind the singular vision, because there's plenty of white space out there.
Right.
And so, you know, I think, and then so building a great team is another really important thing for us. I think, you know, can you attract the right talent that's going to be with you for the long haul? And I think then more practically, you know, we don't require a demo or an MVP or a vertical slice, but it helps. If you have that conviction, you're an experienced founder, we're very happy to have that conversation and kind of jam with you early. And we've actually done that. There's a couple of deals that we've completed that we haven't announced yet, that it was literally just a couple of founders with, you know, a really deep thesis in an area that we were aligned with and we felt that we could help. But I think, you know, the reality is that, you know, the tools are democratized now. You know, I mean, if you want to build, you can learn Unity, you can go to the forums, you can build a small team, you can get an MVP out, and you can just start building. So some kind of traction does help, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. So, you know, you guys don't really have a specific, you know, stage where you get in, or do you have like a specific vision for, you know, this has to be the stage, the studio should be at this stage, only then we can, you know, get into this and talk about this, or how does this work?
Yeah, so we prefer to come in early. So, you know, sometimes we're the first institution in. Sometimes we've come into companies which have previously just done like one round or so, which has been by accelerators or let's say angels. But more and more, we are now coming in early and being the first institution in, because we feel that, you know, there are very few people who genuinely understand gaming and game development, and we see founders make some very critical mistakes early on in their journey. And by the time we come in, then there's a lot of course correction that those founders need to do. So it's better for us to be there from the start and guide them and, you know, give them access to best practices, give them access to the right talent, the right strategic partners, so that they're set up for success from the get-go. You know, we also put a lot of emphasis on culture. We have a panel of leadership development coaches who also work with our founders, so that they're ready to build companies from the day one, as opposed to them floundering and, you know, spending some money, 300 for the first $200,000, wasting that, and then coming to us, and then we're saying, well, oh, now you need to go back and redo everything. And I think that's our preference is, you know, we come in from the get-go.
Got it.
I think I would just add that the other field, given that you have a large developer community listening to this, look, I think broadly there are two kinds of investment opportunities. One is we can get onto kind of project financing and publishing and versus venture. But I think just to answer it within the context of this question, another filter we do have is, you know, is this opportunity really venture scale? Is there enough of an addressable market here in a white space that, you know, could become a $500 billion market business? And, you know, I think that's more about investing long-term as partners via equity, you know, in the VC construct, which is typically what we do as a fund. And of course, that's kind of the core business that we do. But there's kind of another category of opportunities, which is, you know, I can't think more just the straight up indies, And a lot of those guys are building, great titles, super talented, but they're kind of lifestyle businesses, right? They're kind of like, I'm building something because I enjoy it. I'm not that concerned about the top line or building a long-term sustainable business. And we talk to a lot of them, and we connect them with publishers, we connect them with media and talent, and we love to help because we want to see the overall ecosystem succeed. But they may not necessarily be venture fundable businesses, but we still are there to help.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people because this is directed towards the developer community. There are a lot of people who don't understand the concept of VC in general, right? And they are under this impression that I have a kick-ass idea. Everybody has a kick-ass idea, right? Everybody think his or her idea is the best and the coolest idea on the planet, right? But what they are under the impression that I have a great idea and I'm looking for funding, right? Now there are a lot of aspects when somebody invests in your company or a game, even a game, right? But the misconception of people that the VCs or the investors are interested in the game, I think it's more of a company or a business, or the founder and the vision of the founder around the game. Like, game is just an entity of it, probably, because even I've like the day we started looking out for investors as well, when I started learning about this, I was surprised because I was very very young, and I was like, I had no idea about how to pitch to investors and all that. And I created my first 2 decks wherein I wrote about the game, right? And then I got to know that the people who got invested, they never spoke about the game. It was the business of the games that was more important, right? Can you just guide people that what exactly is it all about it, when you guys are investing?
Yeah, that's really spot on, especially, and it goes, it's a great segue from what Justin was saying, that if you have decided you want to go down the venture capital path, then you have to understand the venture capital business, which is that if there is somebody who is giving you this capital, it's an incredibly risky asset, because games are an incredibly risky business.
Yeah.
Is unsecured capital, so it's not like you have have a collateral against this capital that you're getting. So it's literally money which is coming in to back you as an individual, especially at the early stage, to back you as the individual and the vision of what you're going to build, with the future promise that this is going to be a massive business which will then eventually be able to provide a return to the VC, right? Because as VCs, we are also custodians of capital provided to us by our investors, and we would only deploy it in opportunities that we feel can eventually yield a return. And so it's very important to understand that perspective when you're going to pitch VC. So it's very much absolutely about the business of the game, because as I said before, there is no guarantee this one game will succeed, and unless you're an incredibly experienced second time founder who has shipped multiple successful games previously, it is very rare to raise money just on a single project or just on a single game. Now, if you're pitching a publisher, that's totally different. But if you're coming to the VC, you need to do a couple of things. The first is talk about your team and how your team is uniquely positioned to be building in this particular genre. And if this particular game doesn't do well, then what does your business do after that? Because we know from in our experience that the first game is going to suck, and it's most likely not going to succeed. So we give our founders enough runway to experiment, iterate, to at least get 3, 4, 5 shots at goal. So it's important to be able to craft that story for your VC investor and say, well, this is the capital that I need. This is what I'm going to do with it. This is the runway or the months of experimentation time that I get. And these are the things that I'm going to do with it. I'm going to build an MVP. These are going to be my retention targets. This is what I'm going to do in terms of the next. If this game doesn't work out, these are what I have planned to, maybe think of some other projects. So these are the milestones that I have, which can help us achieve success. And once we achieve these milestones, this is the plan to the next round of financing, or this is the plan to profitability. And this is essentially the map that you need to provide to your VC, with a larger vision of what is it that you as a company can do exceptionally different from all the other gaming companies out there? Because bear in mind, there are about 200 games that are launched or maybe more on the App Store every day. So the competition that you have is immense. And uh, for game development companies, your biggest competition is boredom and anything else. Anything else that will take away a user's attention from their mobile phone is competition for you. So
Yeah.
how you as a company are going to capture the attention of that user with the best experience possible and with the larger vision of what is it that you want to achieve and carve a niche out for your companies, it becomes incredibly important.
Got it. Got it.
I mean, the broad construct with venture financing, I think if you take away one point here is that the success of your business and your company is intrinsically linked to our success as a fund. It's a long-term investment in you guys, right? So it's less transactional, I think, than a project or game-based funding. And as Salone said, it may not be your first game, even your third game that ends up being successful. And so as long as you have the vision and the conviction and you have a strategy around how to continue to build and iterate and improve in that space, that's something that we look at. With game funding, I think project funding, that's more closely aligned, I think, with publishers, or maybe there's some project financing vehicles that are out there at the moment. And that construct is very viable as well. You typically, you'll take an advance on marketing and sometimes development costs for your game, your project, and then you pay back the publisher from revenue after release. And then after you hit break even, there's a rev share of somewhere between 30-60%. And that model is absolutely viable, which is why big publishers are still in business. But I think it's important to note that these two approaches are not mutually exclusive, right? So we back companies and founders if it makes sense for them to find a publisher for their title for a particular game that has particular expertise or can help take their game global, then we're completely open to that. And of course, a lot of the big games publishers are also investors in us, so we can facilitate those conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you guys definitely look at this 3-year, 5-year plans and the studios, along with the persistent nature of the founders for the company, as a whole. But do you guys if I don't have a plan, like you just mentioned, right? If I don't have a plan, do you guys fund a game separately, like only the game and not the company, or whether you know connect with the publishers if somebody approaches you? Because there are developers in India who are good in developing games, but they're not good at the business of it. uh, how are these people, what is the benefit for these people? Do you guys do that?
Yeah, we're very happy to. Look, I think as a fund, it's our responsibility to our own investors to back companies that have a long-term vision and a plan. And of course, that may change and it may pivot because the market is always evolving. But when it comes to game financing, we don't typically just fund a game or a project in its own. We will be funding teams with a vision, long-term conviction about a white space, as we've discussed. Having said that, I mean, we've spoken to, I think, well over 200 indies across the indie ecosystem, and maybe they're not venture scale, but we do our best to connect them to publishers. We give them product feedback. Maybe, they're building something which has a lot of untapped potential, but they haven't really thought commercially about how to build this from a game into an actual business.
Yeah.
And so that's something we spend a lot of time doing as well. And in fact, some of those opportunities, these are slow burn, right? I mean, it may not be overnight. Sometimes these guys, we don't want to force their hand and say, build this business. It's a creator's business and it's you guys to figure out what you want to build. But if we come across an idea and a team that we feel, really can aim for the, swing for the sixes, or I'm breaking up on my allegories here. But if they can really go the distance, essentially, then we're very happy to work with them and figure out how to refine their business for that opportunity.
Yeah, and just to as a continuation of that point, this is exactly why we launched our Lumikai Spark program. We were seeing a lot of indies coming to us, but their ideas weren't fully refined, or a lot of indies were hesitant to come to us because they felt, oh, we're not ready yet. And this is why we have launched this program, which is a one-to-one jam session with either me or Justin. And that's where you can ask those questions that you feel a little bit awkward about asking. You can stress test your idea. You can probably get a little bit of a sense of what VCs are looking for and whether your business is a VC business or not. And this is exactly why we launched that program. So we've got slots open. So if there are developers who are keen to speak to us and just get some of those questions answered, they should apply to our Lumikai Spark program. It's on our website. It's on our LinkedIn as well. There's a registration form, so people should go and sign up for it.
Yeah, because I think it's one of the biggest loopholes that I find in the country. There are good developers, but no knowledge about how to create business out of it. They're also like, some of them are really passionate about it. They know what they want to do, but they don't have enough support and understanding as well. Because there are a lot of things that even at this point, because you guys are at the other end of the table, even I would say that I'm at the learning stage and I can learn 10 more things from you guys from that side, right? So there are a lot of people, and I think things like Lumikai Spark would definitely help the industry overall. I remember we spoke a couple of weeks back, Justin, when when you mentioned about this Founders Jam as well. Can you touch base on that, or is it the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, so this is the program Salone was just describing, which is essentially that I think there is a mindset and a psychology when you come to a VC that kind of that pitch meeting is like, it's kind of like an exam. And so, but there's a lot of great ideas out there. And so I think if you're not quite ready for that, but you feel like you have a great idea, you're putting together a great team, and you've thought about what you want to build long term, but you just want to get kind of feedback on it, and you just want to jam with people who've kind of been through that journey of built game companies, then that's what this program is for. That's what Spark is for. And I think the other thing I'd add to this is that even if it's not necessarily venture fundable from our perspective, we talk with all of the big global publishers and platform holders all the time. A lot of them are invested in the long-term success of our business in terms of what we fund, but they're also looking for projects to finance and publish on a project basis. So I think, even if it's not something which is, specifically for Lumikai or for another venture fund, do reach out to us because there are a lot of global publishers looking to publish titles.
Absolutely incredible. Now we all know, raising money is a monstrous task. And working with VCs or investors sometimes can become too stressful for the startup founders, right? How is Lumikai different from a typical VC firm? Like, just your take on your strategies or the major difference I would want to know.
I think the biggest difference is that we understand the founder journey. Both Justin and I have been entrepreneurs and gaming entrepreneurs, right? So we understand what it takes to really build a great gaming company, right? Capital is only one of the problems that you face. You will face challenges in building teams and hiring the right talent. You will face challenges on how to have the right culture, especially because you're a creative business. You will then face challenges around, if you are a mobile gaming company, how do you take your game from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 10, right? So how do you think about things like live ops, and how do you think about development, and how do you think about sprint cycles? Then how do you make sure that once you've shipped a game, you get distribution right? So there are just so many levels to this process of building and shipping games and taking them to the users, that that's something that we've done before. We've been in the trenches and we really understand. Second is, we speak the founder language. We understand the complexity of building games. And we spend a lot of time doing product jams with founders. Often we get feedback from founders saying, wow, you've actually spent time playing our game, or you've actually spent time on a platform and you come back with 5 other comments on the product. Like we're spending time doing giving product feedback on first time user experiences, on UI, UX, on game design, on how to make game loops. And that takes founders often a little bit by surprise, that there's somebody who goes in so deep into their games and their products and gives them just what is best practices. Or if we don't know, and we there are obviously millions of genres out there, we at least know enough to be able to provide them access to the best talents. So whether it's game design experts, or whether it's performance marketing experts, or whether it is monetization experts, quality art talent, it's our almost job to kind of bring the best together to be able to help our companies.
Yeah, I think having an understanding of that particular industry is a big plus compared to the other VC firms as well, because a lot of VCs more majorly focus on fintech and other aspects are not in gaming, but you guys having such experience in gaming would really help any company who come on board with you guys. Just just a generic question, given your experience, when do you think, because see there is a lot of FOMO that is happening in India as well, because there's a lot of money flowing in, there is good amount of money in the market that can be raised, right? And people have this because this is happening, people are running behind, I have this, I have decent traction or even no traction, but I want to raise money. According to your experience, when should one exactly raise money?
So there's no one size fits all answer to this, but our answer is broadly that it can be too late to come and talk to us, but it's never too early to come and talk to us. And so we've built these programs like Lumikai Spark, and to be honest, we weren't planning on doing it, but we're responding in real time to kind of the demands of the market as well, and we've had our own learnings over the last 7-8 months. And I think initially when we launched, we saw a lot of fairly sophisticated founders come to us that were looking for a VC-focused, game-focused VC. And we've made some investments from that pool, but we're also seeing kind of a new batch now of founders who are super talented, have never been through the VC journey, and are just kind of looking to help, I guess, understand what it means. Like, what does the process look like? And is it for them, in fact? It may not be for everybody. And so we started this program, the Spark program, specifically to allow founders at an even earlier stage to come and just jam with us and get feedback. So I think, typically VCs would like to see some traction, retention, early signs of monetization, unit economics, etc. But for us, we've decided to actually go even earlier, open up the field for basically anyone who's got a vision and an idea.
Got it.
I think the time to raise money from a VC is, when you have, at least, I think the basic would be when you have a very clear vision of what you want to build and you feel that you're the right person to build it. I think that's the time when you go out to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of last questions that I have, right? Because it's India, and you guys are, probably, I would say, dominating Indian space in coming few years. But what vision does Lumikai have for India? What would be the picture in, say, next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think, so the domestic market is growing at around 40% year on year at the moment. That's going to continue for the foreseeable future. We should touch $5 billion in market value by 2025. So that's over the next 5 years. So, I mean, look, this market is going to continue to grow.
Right.
So there's plenty of opportunity for all. On the studio side, look, 5 years ago, there were 20, 25 game studios in India. In the last 8 months alone, we've spoken to over 500. We don't actually have an exact count on how many there are. But I think we've been blown away by just the sheer number and quality of founders that we're seeing. And we hope that that's going to continue. So, I mean, I think we're hoping to see more diversity of founders that are chasing new ideas versus just the old ones, right? I mean, you have had like a year where real money gaming was hot, or fantasy was hot, and then real money gaming, and then it's esports. And these are all viable business areas to focus on. But, Lumikai, I mean, just to circle back on what Lumikai actually means, Lumi is the Latin root word for light, and Kai is the kind of Japanese root word for tribe. And so, really baked into our DNA is this idea that we're looking to fund founders that are really looking to the future, not just what's popular now.
Yeah.
So I think we started to see more of that diversity and new ideas coming to the table, especially built around the core thesis that Indian gamers are more sophisticated than the market, and a lot of investors give them credit for. And so I think, we're hoping to see more of that higher quality content for the domestic market. And we've started to see it, but we hope that continues.
Absolutely exciting days to come. One last question. Just the details. How should one approach Lumikai? What is the easiest, and what are the ways people can approach you guys?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're super accessible. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. Both Justin and I are incredibly responsive. We also have a Lumikai inbox, which is hello@lumikai.com. So if you're interested in just chatting with us and you want to brainstorm with us, sign up for a Spark program, or just drop us a message in any one of these platforms. We'd be happy to get back in touch with you.
Yeah,
I would suggest prioritizing hello@lumikai.com over LinkedIn. LinkedIn, of course, we are responsive with there, but we get a lot of inbound, and a lot of it, frankly, is not even game related. And so we're a little bit less responsive there. But hello@Lumikai, again, we haven't announced this publicly, but it goes to everyone in the team. It goes directly to the partners as well. So if you email us, that's the best way to get in touch.
Got it. So I'll put all the links in the description. Both these guys as well as Lumikai. So guys, if you want to check it out, just go do some research, check out the portfolio, and you can easily approach these guys. All right, guys, just last part, parting thoughts, if you have, to give it to the users, to the developers, to the people who are watching this podcast.
Yeah, I think, we're incredibly excited about what the future of India's interactive entertainment and gaming space holds. We think very deeply about what this next wave of gaming and interactive will mean for India. And we are in turn inspired by founders who see beyond just the current trends and who are forward thinking and who have a very clear vision of the future, and also simultaneously have a laser focus on the priorities together. We're always happy to partner with you.
Awesome.
Yeah. I would just add that, as someone who's built games companies over the last 18, 19 years and had a tough time at it, frankly, there's never been a better time now than to build a games company. Everyone is looking for good founders, for good games teams. The market is growing. Dream big. Come and talk to us. We're friendly. We don't bite. Yeah, get in touch.
And come talk to us via Lumikai Spark, guys. It's a great. We've seen some great response. We've already seen some very interesting companies come and register. So if you genuinely have an idea and you're looking to build in this space, sign up for Lumikai Spark.
All right, guys, that was all. Thank you, Justin and Salone, for joining us on this podcast. It was very, very insightful. I think it would help a lot of the young developers who are looking to create businesses in gaming space. Thank you once again.
Awesome. Thank you.